Good afternoon. This is Campbell McCrary here at Amvest Capital in New York, Vice President of Capital Markets. Welcome to the Amvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Clean Air Metals Inc. Clean Air trades on the venture as AIR and on the OTCQB as CLRMF. It's in Charlie Lima Rio Mike Foxtrot. We hope you'll enjoy today's program. We'll also be available in replay mode. Do feel free to chat in your questions in the question pane of GoToWebinar, or simply email them in and we'll ask the questions in real time. Technical, macro, whatever is on your mind. Note that Amvest is a New York-based specialist investment management and corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resources sector. And again, important disclaimer, this call is for informational purposes only. Very pleased to have with us not one, but two gentlemen from the companies. Abraham, I'm going to make you presenter. First, we have Jim Gallagher, the executive chairman, engineer by background, seasoned mining executive and professional engineer with 35-year plus track record of optimizing operational performance, leading successful projects and consulting with global scope. He was most recently the president and CEO of North American Palladium, which sold in 2019 for $1 billion in Impala Platinum. We also have with us Abraham Drost, the president and the CEO and director of the firm. And he's a professional geoscientist by background and also has 35 years of career in the space, and is a former president and director of Sabina Gold and Silver, former president and director of Sand Spring Resources, and former CEO director of Source Exploration. He is also a former chairman of Premier Gold Mines USA Inc. and the former CEO and founding director of Premier Royalty. Again, following the formal presentation, members of Amvest Capital will be asking a series of questions, and we'll also incorporate questions from the larger listening audience, which we look forward to getting through your sending through the question pane of GoToWebinar control panel. So with that, Abraham, Jim, take us through it. Give us an update. I think there's an update in order. Good.
Yes, thank you very much, Campbell. And I just want to verify you can see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Well, thanks very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Clean Air Metals. Clean Air Metals was formed and started trading on May the 22nd of this year around the consolidation of two very promising platinum, palladium, copper, nickel assets, collectively now known as the Thunder Bay North Project. Jim and I will be making some forward-looking statements. Around here, we also call that vision. It's my little joke. And Jim, of course, as Campbell pointed out, had a great run with North American Palladium at the Lac des Îles mine. Jim was, prior to joining North American Palladium, he was director of global director of mining for Hatch, a consultant, saw hundreds of deposits in that capacity, came to North American Palladium effectively to address some of the problems they were having. They hired him. He and Jim and his team turned the mine around and sold it to Implats last December, which was a remarkable accomplishment. My background, junior mining, and certainly very pleased, to have jumped into this deal, particularly because the project is in my backyard. I live in and have worked out of Thunder Bay for 30 years. The company has 139.7 million shares issued and has about 7.5 million in the bank. We are drilling, and we'll shut down shortly for Christmas. I expect to start up again drilling mid-January and complete the balance of our 30,000 meter drill program, which we started last May. I'm very pleased with the team's performance in getting roughly 20,000 meters under our belts in about the half year that we've been drilling at Escape Lake. We're currently drilling metallurgical drill holes over at Current Lake to provide a bulk sample for Blue Coast Research, our selected laboratory for bench scale metallurgical testing. And so we're very looking forward very much to that particular work being completed, and that will feed into the actual PEA that we plan to deliver in Q2, which will be preceded, as you'll hear, by our NI 43-101 resource update on Current Lake and Escape Lake to be delivered mid next month. So that is part of the exciting update today. Also very pleased to to sort of shout out to our latest press release yesterday with respect to our equity, diversity, and inclusion policy. We are very pleased with our gender equity and our ethnic diversity at Clean Air Metals, and we believe it makes us a stronger company. And we're very proud of our relationships with our First Nation communities as well. So have a look at that press release if you haven't had a chance already. And with respect to First Nations, we have relationships with 3 First Nation communities on whose traditional territories we find our mineral claims. In Canada, these rights are protected, treaty rights in particular, and non-reserve lands on which traditional activities have historically been conducted, such as the right to hunt, fish, trap, and gather. These are protected by the Constitution of Canada. And so it's to the extent that we could impact those activities that certainly consultation and accommodation is required. And we are well down the road with our 3 communities, the Fort William First Nation, the Red Rock First Nation, and BZA, also known as Binjir-Awabek Zaging Anishinabek First Nation. And we have a very strong consulting group helping us with that effort, and we're currently negotiating the next stage of agreement, which would be the precursor to the impact and benefits agreement, which would be tied to feasibility. So we'll go through that in a little more detail in a subsequent slide. And now I'll bring in my colleague, Jim Gallagher, Executive Chairman of Clean Air Metals, to comment on the commodity mix at Thunder Bay North and the relative contribution to pro forma revenue stream. Jim.
Thank you, Abraham, and good afternoon, everyone. We threw this slide together to really show its rather unique nature. Even though PGMs are quite popular these days, we have the full suite of metal and certainly material values of palladium, platinum, copper, nickel, and some other byproducts, and I'll touch very briefly on all of them. The size of the circle is very generically representative of the potential revenue contribution by each metal, and of course some of them recently at very good prices, and especially palladium. So palladium been much in the news. Prediction came out yesterday from one of the banks that we might see over $3,000 on palladium. What's really behind that is a multi-year deficit in primary mine supply versus overall consumption, and that is totally driven by increased standards in emissions control, as almost 90% of palladium goes into catalytic converters in internal combustion engines. And there has literally been a step change in that consumption, up to loadings as high as 30% higher in a catalytic converter in order to meet new emission standards and tougher testing. So that we don't see changing. And as I say, I think we need some reasonable growth in battery electric vehicles to actually take some of the heat off of this deficit in the market. Deficit's been filled by increases in recycling and drawdown of almost all of the surface stockpiles, which are at record lows. The other, and we actually have platinum and palladium in a 1-to-1 ratio in this deposit. Platinum has fallen off over the last few years, directly related to the Dieselgate scandal and Volkswagen and other auto manufacturers. It used to be $1,600 an ounce. It has recently come back and is well over $1,000 an ounce. And I think personally that it has one of the greatest chances of all the metals on here for a major breakout on price, totally driven by the hydrogen fuel cell, the last bullet point inside the bubble. Hydrogen fuel cells are the other alternate technology. I believe the future is probably going to see a mix of battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell. Certain jurisdictions, especially the Koreans and the Japanese, both at the government level and auto manufacturers are heavily pushing the technology, very much geared towards the trucking industry, buses, public transportation, that sort of thing. And you should note that one bank of fuel cells typically has up to an ounce of platinum, and a truck typically has at least 2, if not more, banks of fuel cells. So because platinum is such a small market, we actually think any significant increase in consumption is really going to see the price move here. Platinum is, in fact, about an 8 million ounce a year market behind palladium, which is now almost an 11 million ounce consumption market. So copper and nickel, of course, primary battery electric metals. Copper for sure seems to have a very bright future. Electric motors, but also the supporting infrastructure to deliver more electricity to all jurisdictions. So look for copper to be very strong moving forward. Nickel, a key element in current battery technology. Elon Musk says, give me more clean, conflict-free nickel, and so we certainly can be a source of that. We believe once we publish our first initial resource, which Abraham has stated, should be approximately the 3rd week of January. The copper nickel values alone probably are going to be better than 1%. As a nickel miner out of the Sudbury Basin with Falconbridge for a good chunk of my life, approximately 1% nickel was kind of our minimum cutoff grade, which meant it paid for your basic operating costs, processing costs. So we have at least 1% copper and nickel in this mix. We also have meaningful values of silver, gold. We also have rhodium, and we also have cobalt. And we, through the good work of Nordman, and we'll talk about our engineering firm as we progress in the presentation, they've identified higher grade areas in the deposit, and we think rhodium will be value add to this as well as cobalt. So quite a mix. What we say is we have a natural kind of insurance policy or a hedge here. If whatever technology takes off, we've got the metals for it. If palladium drops off, it'll only be because some of the others have really taken off. So we're pretty pleased with the basket of metals that we have, and think overall the average price is going to stay pretty strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, so location-wise, Lake Superior Basin, northwestern Ontario, Canada. There we are with the little call-out bubble there, just above the north shore of Lake Superior. 60 kilometers from the Lac des Îles mine complex, Jim's old mine. Just across the lake, we have the Eagle deposit, operated by Lundin Mining. We also have the Generation Mining Marathon PGM deposit. It's in full feasibility now, a joint venture with Sibanye-Stillwater. And then the Tamarack deposit, operated as an advanced exploration project, nickel, copper, cobalt by Talon Metals. Should point out that the Duluth intrusive complex we refer to there is also the largest repository of low-grade nickel, copper, cobalt, and PGEs actually in North America, if not the world. It's quite stunning, and Polymet, of course, is working in that area, looking to get their project going as well. So, and everything formed around the Mid-Continent Rift metalotect, and Proterozoic mineralization for the geologists in the crowd, and leading to a very sort of predictable outcome of various nickel copper PG deposits, a number of which have been located, and the exploration potential are quite significant. More specifically, as I said, our concession just down the road from Lac des Îles in the northwest quadrant, about 7 years of reserve life there. And the mine cash flowed, at Lac des Îles cash flowed over 200 million last year, and is expected to do something similar this year. We'll see what the final numbers are for implants. But we have 30,000 hectares in green, protecting 2 deposits, Escape Lake and Current Lake, as I mentioned. And we are also well served, in addition to the paved provincial highway you see on the northern or the western part of the project, traversing our mining claims. We also have a high voltage transmission line, 230 kilovolts, taking power from northwestern Ontario down to southern Ontario and we are along the path. So that sets us up quite well infrastructurally. The Current Lake deposit we acquired from Panoramic of Australia. They had a 9.8 million ton historic estimate on that particular deposit using an open pit constrained model. We're looking at an underground approach. Jim will say more about that. And quite frankly, 9.8 million tons open pit is on the low side, and Jim will explain why. And but what really attracted Jim and I suppose, to the project, or was this headline sort of intercept in the Current Lake deposit, 2.6 meters of 3-ounce platinum palladium material, and about 5 grams gold, plus over 14% copper and nickel. That is quite stunning. I'll show you a picture of that in this presentation. But also, we believe that that particular intercept and a half dozen others like it were probably transported and injected into their current location. So it actually bodes well for a third deposit, or deposits, shall we say, on the project, because this particular massive sulfide interval would have had to been snatched or entrained from a larger pool of massive sulfides, and we intend to find it. Escape Lake Trend discovery by Rio Tinto, the vendor of the project to Clean Air Metals, through Benton Resources. A little shout out for Benton. They did a fabulous job putting this project together, and are significant shareholders of the issue, 17%. And but our drill results, as I mentioned, 20,000 meters to date, are very consistent with what was generated originally by Rio. As I say, we're 20,000 meters in of a 30,000 meter program. We're getting great, fantastic grades, and very substantial width, as you could also see at our website at cleanairmetals.ca. So have a look at our news flow since May, half a dozen technical sort of drilling updates, and the grades are quite stunning. 1-to-1 platinum palladium ratio, which is fairly typical for Proterozoic mineralization and gives us great optionality, as Jim explained, with respect to future uses of PGEs. And of course, a very substantial and notable copper nickel endowment. Zooming into the concession then, the central part of the property, we have a geological formation known as the Thunder Bay North Intrusive Complex, outlined in green. And on the right-hand side, called the Current Lake deposit, you can see an appendage there, which is the resource area, 647 white dots, which are drill hole colors that form the deposit, and a twin deposit or trend to the west with multiple resource areas on it that we'll be reporting in January. And we are presently focusing most of our drilling efforts at Escape Lake, and we think Escape Lake wants to be every bit as significant as Current Lake over time. It just takes time to drill these things off. They're 3 kilometers long. They're mineralized along their entire length, and you have to drill them off at 50-meter spacings. So just imagine. So it does take some time, but that's okay, because Current Lake is pre-development and Escape Lake is advanced exploration, and they're tied together by the Escape Lake Fault, which is the long linear east-west feature that I'll show you in the next slide. There it is. If you didn't know what a magma conduit looks like, well, now you do. 3 kilometer long magma intrusions into the surrounding country rock, which is part sediments, Archean sediments, part Archean granitoids. I'll show you a map that kind of defines that a little bit better, but you can see the resource area on the right-hand side in the top half of the Current Lake intrusion. And it's a big cluster of holes there, 647 to be exact, and then another 50 or so exploration holes chasing the project down the plunge out of open pit range. But that's the beauty of the underground model, which Jim Gallagher brought to the table, because you can go after it. You're not constrained by a pit depth, and Jim will say more about that. And then to the west, 3 kilometers along the Escape Lake Fault, the Escape Lake intrusion, magma conduit, also 3 kilometers long, mineralized along its entire length, as you'll see in the next slide, and looking every bit like it wants to be, just like its big sister to the east. And here we have Jim's money slide, which shows all three sort of, well, the two main deposits And the third area of inquiry called the feeder zone, where we think we might be able to find an additional massive sulfide deposit. Jim, why don't you take it away?
Sure. What I'd like to point out in this slide is that there are three unique and distinct opportunities within the whole Thunder Bay North project. First and foremost is the bridge zone, or the current lake deposit, which you see across the full width of the screen. It has a full 3 kilometer strike length. It is extremely well drilled off. Thank you to Panoramic Resources of Australia, who put 645 holes in the mineral zone itself. We are not currently drilling on this deposit, with the exception of some metallurgical test holes, which we'll talk about later. This is where the original resource of just under 10 million tons was published, and it was done as an open pit. You can see the 2011 pit constrained resource outline, and it only included the material to the down plunge side of the Beaver Lake zone. So, and the zones the intrusion does get larger as you go to depth in terms of dimensions, width, and thickness. So at least 50% of the mineralized inventory that was drilled off was not included in the pit constrained resource. We have taken an underground approach from day one with this. The open pit had a number of issues, 9-to-1 strip ratio. It is fairly narrow, especially near surface, and primarily for us requires the draining of current lake. And there are a couple of other water bodies that would be impacted by the open pit as well. And we think from a risk, a permitting risk, a permitting timeline, and the overall cost effectiveness of an open pit, that the underground approach, which we believe will be in quicker and will maximize the grade, because as you can see from the color mapping, there is significant high grade in this deposit. And we will be attacking this again as a selective ramp access underground mining method, improving the grade and adding all of the down dip resource that was previously excluded. So you really do have to wait till the resources published, which will be the third week approximately of January, but certainly we're quite confident the grade will improve because of the underground approach, and so will the tonnage, obviously, as we add all that material on the down plunge side. Second to that, we have the escape lake zone. It's approximately 3 kilometers away. Important to note that all we're showing here is the high-grade blob, we'll call it, that is fairly well drilled off, originally discovered by Rio Tinto. We have since added both in the north and south direction. Abraham and team have probably tripled the size of that resource already. We will be including this resource on Escape Lake in the initial published resource for Current Lake as well, and potentially material. So this is another twin conduit, which we believe, when the drilling is done to the right level of detail, will look similar to Current Lake. It does go to surface. There is material near surface. Some of it well drilled enough to at least make the inferred category. And we expect that that will be included as part of our resource update as well. So look for continued drill results. All of our drill results to date that we have published, and as Abraham referenced, you can find those all on our website. Some very good grades. They have all come from the Escape Lake. So lots of drilling to be done to chase this over its expected 3 kilometer strike length as well. Both of these systems, we also believe, are fed from the same fault system and the same feeder system, and that is the third unique target here. This is true greenfields. As Abraham says, some of this really high-grade material and the massive sulfides did not form in place, but was injected. And so we are looking for the feeder zone for both of these conduits and the source of that massive sulfide. Abraham and team have done some very good geophysics, which he'll touch on. So we have a number of good targets to help find that target. So we think we have a development-ready project in Current Lake. We have a very good drill indicated ongoing drilling on Escape Lake, and we have an excellent greenfields target that will potentially take us deeper and is potentially a game changer if we can find the massive sulfide feeder system. So really good suite of projects here.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, and just to pick up on our comments there with respect to the full strike length of the escape lake body, there you see it, and it kind of schematically compilation of results. We're literally only working on the far east end of the conduit thus far and working our way north, also to the southeast now along the escape lake fault. But we can see, quite frankly, resource blocks that have been developed along the conduit, even 3 kilometers away from the far east end. So we believe on balance that by stepping out in a detailed manner over time, that we will find a morphology of mineralization that's quite similar to current lake. We're already seeing evidence of new targets as we work our way uptrend. In fact, new geophysical targets indicating at minimum net textured and or massive sulfide mineralization, which we'll be testing in the new year. So so we'll be hitting it hard again at Escape Lake with 2 drills in the new year. And in terms of results, the latest, December the 7th, 2020, just last week, and the press release on our website. And you can see here the plan view of the Escape Lake mineralization, now roughly triple what Rio generated. We know now it's continuous to the north, and we are slowly on expanding it out that way. We've got lots of infill work to do, but we're also stepping out. So kind of a dual purpose to the drilling. We're also working our way to the southeast. We have a very reliable geophysical information which suggests that the zone of low conductivity and low resistivity and high conductivity, which continues from the high grade zone central area of this plan view, it suggests that it's continuous to the southeast as well. So, and I'll show you what that looks like. If I take that plan view and flip it up on its edge, we see a very nice cross-sectional view of the ultramafic peridotite mineralized core to the gabbroic intrusion, showing very significant platinum palladium high grade, over 10 grams combined. And each of those intercepts has over 2% copper nickel. It goes for 200 meters and it's open in both directions. So I think you can appreciate that we're kind of excited about this geologically, and while it's not yet constrained by any kind of mine model, it is emerging as a very significant geological resource. Just a few comments then with respect to the greenfields upside here. We do use the Norilsk mineral deposit model to guide exploration at Thunder Bay North. On the left-hand side, this slide is the original Google Earth map view I showed you earlier, but it's been rotated 90 degrees to emphasize the Escape Lake Fault, which is now a map northwest feature. We can see the current lake appendage on the top of the slide associated with the fault. We can see midpoint of the Escape Lake appendage or mineral conduit and all the boreholes and so forth. Now, looking at the slide to the on the right-hand side, we have a picture of the Talnak field at Norilsk, responsible for producing about 30% of the world's palladium production and very significant rhodium as a byproduct of copper nickel production from massive sulfide deposits. Norilsk has a bit of a head start. It's been in continuous production since the 1920s. And so, but here's the best part. They're still exploring for new massive sulfide deposits at Talnak today. And so we've taken a page out of their playbook. We are implementing the same geophysical methods and the same techniques to locate massive sulfides at Thunder Bay North. This is new. Nobody's done this before. And furthermore, their appendage, the Karalak branch, which you see sort of midpoint on the Talnak fault, which is the controlling feature, the thick black line at the same scale as the Escape Lake Fault on the left-hand side. Same scale. The appendage there, the Karalak branch, same morphology, stratigraphy, and geology as the two appendages or magma conduits, structure and stratigraphy as Current Lake and Escape Lake. So that's exciting. And so it is a ringer, and quite frankly, we think a very useful analog for us going forward. The massive sulfide intercepts, of course, the 2.6 meter intercept I mentioned at the outset, multi-ounce material. This is a 1 meter intercept out of those 2.6 meters. It's massive sulfides. Here we have 38 grams palladium, over 50 grams platinum, over 15% copper, and just under 3% nickel. If this is a flavor of what's waiting for us deeper in the system, this is worth investing into the search, if you ask me, and my board agrees. So from that perspective, you will see significant effort in 2021 into exploring for this for the source pool of massive sulfides that led to these particular injections into the current lake deposit. And I mentioned granitoids, I mentioned sediments. So the Proterozoic intrusion was injected into Archean sediments, which form a graben between the Quetico fault zone and the Escape Lake fault. A graben is simply a fault-bounded basin infilled by sediments. They show up very commonly in gold systems. They show up very commonly in ultramafic magmatic systems as well, and Current Lake is no exception. The bulk of the mineralization is in the graben, in a structurally prepared area between these two faults. And quite frankly, we have very significant dextral faulting leading to Rydell shearing and dilatancy zones inside this graben, and that's why these magma conduits were emplaced and preserved. And but the feeder zone area for massive sulfides, we believe, is the portion of these Proterozoic intrusions, and I include Escape Lake in this, that's underlain by the Escape Lake fault, which we believe was the feeder for the magma. In other words, it intercepted magma flow from the mid-continent rift. These are deep crustal structures, and the magma came up along these structures and was injected into this graben near surface, and that's what we're exploring today. And so, as Jim mentioned, we've had some very exciting geophysics. The black lines you see here superimposed over the graben that protects the Current Lake intrusion and deposit, and the Escape Lake intrusion and deposits. These black lines are the survey lines that we ran, magnetotellurics. You can see the Rydell shear fabric here in the graben. You can see the northwest orientation of the intrusions, which is along that structural fabric. It's a very elegant geological scenario here. This is the data that we generated, and quite exciting for us because first and foremost, it picks up the two intrusions. This is actually micromine data. This is our real database here showing all the boreholes, showing the Current Lake intrusion, showing the Escape Lake intrusion, and more particularly showing that they track channels of low resistivity and high conductivity, as we see here. In fact, they're perfectly aligned with those, with those features in the geophysics, which was quite stunning for us and actually speaks to the accuracy of the data in our opinion. There are several other features as well, which are heretofore unknown, including this bullseye anomaly, including some subparallel structures, to both intrusions. There is potential here for other conduits. There's also potential for massive sulfides. In particular, this bullseye feature, which our geophysicists tell us is a low resistivity, high conductivity feature, which is rod-like, coming in and out of the page. And the exploration methodology that would be used by Nornickel in a situation like this would be to get as close as you can with a borehole, and then do borehole EM and/or other exploration techniques, and then chase the conductor plate that's developed after that. So that is a work in progress. That'll be work that we report on additionally in 2021. But just have a look at the way the Current Lake conduit comes down here and tracks through that area of low resistivity, high conductivity. I mean, this gives, as Jim said, a really good view of just the amount of drilling that Panoramic did to define that deposit, and then sold it to Clean Air Metals through Benton as they left Canada. I mean, it's a stunning opportunity. And so in summary then, the company consolidated these two projects in 2020. We funded to the tune of $21.6 million in 2020. We have $7.5 million after property payments and drilling expenses to date, so we're well funded to move into 2021 with vigor. Certainly, we are well engaged with our 3 First Nation communities who we believe are going to be very strong project partners longer term at Clean Air Metals. They're very excited about the project. They have a variety of services that they offer and a very substantial workforce as well. So we'll be thinking about training and skills transfer. And it's going to be very important to the city of Thunder Bay, the town of Nipigon, Red Rock, and local towns in the area as well. Pro forma forward-looking statement, of course. But as you'll see from the resource in January and the PEA in June, this is a serious project. What else? Greenfields exploration. I just talked about it. The January update on resource, the PEA in June. These are the milestones that our shareholders can expect in 2021. It's going to be a very exciting year, and I fully expect we'll be adding a drill and adding another somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000 meters of drilling in 2021. Now then, project timeline. I don't propose to read this to you, but you can see this on our website at cleanairmetals.ca as part of the corporate presentation. Obviously, we just put out our 6th drill release, very well received, very substantial widths, quite decent grades, a very high grade core there of, sort of 3 to 4 grams each of palladium and platinum in that 83 meter intersection. And sort of 1 to 2% copper nickel. So very, very strong intercept on a structure that we're just now starting to get a handle on. And of course, encourage you to study the Escape Lake slides in more detail, or reach out to Jim and myself, whose our contact information is on the website and in the corporate presentation. But Jim, maybe just a few remarks here in conclusion about our engineering service provider.
Right, we've employed Nordman after going through a selection process. Nordman is a Thunder Bay-based full-service engineering provider who do have the ability to carry this project right into a construction phase. We were very specific with very detailed scopes of work as we went out for this. As I like to say, we are not interested in getting a quick and dirty resource and a quick and dirty PEA just to wave that in front of investors for raising money. We're treating this as the first phase of engineering on a project that we intend to build. So we're doing extra work even on the resource validation side. We're doing something called synchrotron testing to understand the mineralogy better, because there's at least 50 PGM type minerals, and it's best to understand both for exploration and for processing what you're really dealing with. As mentioned, we are actually going to be drilling and are starting to drill metallurgical test holes to provide a bulk sample. I think we've started shipping those off to the provider, Blue Coast, out in British Columbia. And we'll be doing extra bench testing because, as you would have seen, there's lots of value in this ore, lots of minerals, and we want to make sure we optimize the full recovery of this suite of metals. And in parallel, of course, to the resource validation, which again will be out mid to late January, we are doing the initial mining scoping studies, publishing a PEA late in the second quarter, and we've added extra scopes of work to that. We know we will lose some resource under the lake, so we've actually employed a geotech firm to work with Nordman, who have given us an opinion on that. So again, not straight desktop, but some site review and review of core. The flow sheet design, we're spending extra work on that, as we've already mentioned. Given the suite of metals, clean air, the electric revolution, we are seriously looking at electric vehicles for this operation, potentially an all-electric mine, or what is reasonable and practical to do under the circumstances. So really putting a lot of effort into this. Again, we intend to build this, and especially with Escape Lake, it's a development ready. The first high-grade zone is only 70 meters underground, so relatively straightforward ramp access mining, and that's the kind of work that Nordman's doing for us to paint that picture. So,
yeah, thanks very much, Jim. And yeah, just like to just you know, sort of a little shout out for our board of directors as well. This is a team that can make the transition from explorer to developer and miner. Jim and I, of course, forming the nucleus of the board and management team. Ewan Downey, who was part of his own big press release this morning, as it's been announced that Premier Gold Mines is being sold to Equinox. But Ewan brought Premier effectively from the status of junior explorer to junior miner, and 2 projects in full production in Mexico and Nevada, and joint venture with Barrick, but also just yesterday after the close announced that they had regained effectively control of the Greenstone deposit, and this morning it was announced that Equinox was taking out the whole work. So in typical Ewan fashion, he's strung a few deals together to build shareholder value, and we certainly applaud his efforts, and very much look forward to his experience at the boardroom table. Marianne Crichton, director of the PDAC, management consultant with Hatch, professional engineer and specialist in ESG and CSR matters. Marianne is chair of our sustainability committee. Dean Chambers, professional engineer, and also Brookfield's designate as independent director on the North American Palladium board before and at the sale to Implats. Dean is chair of our audit committee and is really our corporate governance guru. Every board needs one, and we've got ours. And so quite frankly, this is a team that can go the distance with this project. And so thank you very much for your kind attention, and certainly happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Excellent. We had a bunch of great questions sent in. We've got a few up our sleeve as well, but thank you people for sending them in, because they're fresh and from the heart, and help everyone get to know the story. How confident are you that you have a Norilsk style target?
Well, again, structure and stratigraphy, and we're very confident that we have a Norilsk style target based on the research that we've done, Campbell. Multiple research papers produced by sort of Norilsk and other academic Russian authors and so forth. It is actually quite stunning, the similarities between, say, features like the Kerlak branch and Current Lake and Escape Lake magma conduits. So we're onto something here. This was not something that, again, I said, fresh set of eyes, and this is something that really has been brought to the table, under this administration. All right. Not that I'm in the office.
With such a wide commodity suite, do you foresee any difficulties with metallurgical processing and recoveries, or is it too early to say? And are there any other similar historic deposits one could use to model your deposit?
Over to my colleague.
That one, Abraham? Yeah. So, listen, my last project at Falconbridge is a Falconbridge miner. I was involved with the Nickel Rim deposit, and Nickel Rim is their newest mine and the most profitable mine in the Sudbury Basin at this point in time. And it is a nickel copper, very high PGM deposit. So with good values of cobalt. In fact, the Sudbury Basin probably produces about 7% of the world's palladium. So, and unbeknownst to a lot of people, the money makers in Sudbury these days, even with Vale, are the high PGM, high copper deposits. So this is similar to the processing for the metals itself isn't complex. We do know from historical reports and our recent testing, we've got a bit of talc in this deposit, so we got to deal with that. And but that's why we're doing all the good work up front to make sure we optimize. So there are lots of other similar deposits, and Norilsk is another one, obviously, that we've been talking about.
Historically, what have been the principal obstacles to development, and what needs to change economically or in the macro for the project to move forward to development and production? Maybe we can set the record straight a little bit, but yeah, someone has that concern.
Yeah, look, I mean, a couple things. Okay, Jim mentioned the open pit approach. Look, for us, that's a non-starter. You impacted a lake. You had a 9-to-1 or waste ore strip ratio. It was inefficient. It only sort of exploited about 50% of the known deposit. It was not the way to go. So fresh set of eyes, Jim Gallagher. This looks like an underground situation. Nordman agrees, and quite frankly, you know, as I say, there's very substantial improvements to the you know, to the historical work here, just using that approach. The other part, of course, is that when the 2011 study was done, palladium was US 512. Now the trailing 3-year average is 3 times that, and the spot price is 4 times that. So we are using the 3-year trailing average, by the way.
If I could add to that, Campbell, you know, all mining projects have risk, and I think this question comes out of seeing a number of mining projects that stall and have a hard time getting out of the starting gate. You know, Noront being a very good one. But when you look at this project on the whole risk spectrum, very close to the city of Thunder Bay, very close to a paved highway, very close to a large hydroelectric power line, already establishing good relationships with First Nations, which will be a continuous process. So, and it's because it's so close to surface, straightforward ramp access, underground mine, no big pre-strip, no long permitting process for that. It's on the low end of the risk scale when it comes to projects, given its location and the features, and quite frankly, the choices we've made primarily, as Abraham said, to stay away from the open pit.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there extra smelting capacity at Sudbury? Do you have room for your ore for the foreseeable future?
So the answer is yes. Sudbury is always looking for extra feed. The Lac des Îles mine, which I left last December, sends 100% of its concentrate to Glencore, and it's split between the Horn smelter in Quebec and the Sudbury smelter. So the concentrate that would come off this deposit with all the sweeteners in it would be highly desired by Glencore, I can tell you that. But also by perhaps Stillwater, also we used to ship concentrate at Lac des Îles across the ocean in tote bags, quite frankly, to Arubis and other firms like that who do supply product division. So potential.
Yeah, go ahead, Campbell.
Okay, that's good. Stu, take a stab.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, guys. So of the drilling phases, you know, looking forward, is phase 1 and phase 2 would be incorporated into the resource upgrade, we think, and you know, phase 3 is for later on?
Yeah, we're kind of getting rid of the, we've kind of abandoned the phased approach to drilling. It's just, you know, phase 1 is essentially now a 30,000 meter program, Stu, and you know, it kind of started out as phase 1, phase 2, you know, but it's now just a 30,000 meter phase 1 program. That'll be concluded in Q1. You know, we are looking at, you know, the potential. We believe we have targets in 2021 between Escape Lake and Current Lake to justify upwards of 40,000 meters of drilling with 3 drills. We think that's very achievable. We think that, in fact, you know, the market will agree post the release of the resource update. So it really is, you know, it's phase 1 is a 30,000 meter program. I suppose you could say phase 2 would be the 40,000 meter program next year, just to clarify.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Lots of drilling. And then, thinking about permitting, how are you guys approaching it with your change of mining method and, dealing with the provinces and the federal government?
Yeah. So we have a service provider here, which was also Panoramic and Rio's service provider, a company called DST Engineering out of Thunder Bay, and part of the Englobe sort of environmental consulting empire worldwide. Now they picked up the ball. They've done a gap analysis for us. They are part of the engineering environmental team and effectively consult with the group on a regular basis. We have weekly engineering and environmental meetings, and DST is involved. So they have started some longer lead time items. So obviously, we're doing we've resumed baseline water sampling. We're doing ARD, decant towers are up, and we're doing long-term ARD testing, which is the second round of ARD testing, and so on and so forth. So look, we're DST are old hands at mining permitting. And quite frankly, with the gap analysis that they prepared for us, we are going to be initiating longer lead time items also in 2021, and ensuring that, again, along with our First Nation partners, that we obviously, as we get into feasibility, again, forward-looking statement, but, I think you can read between the lines here from some of the statements made today, that we'll be looking at pre-fees likely in Q3, Q4 of 2021, initiating that process. And that's when permitting and, government consultations will proceed in earnest.
Gotcha. And given you guys typically don't do any cheap and dirty studies or anything, you're probably doing a final feasibility quality of work in that PFS, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Well, I think we're clearly doing a lot of the work on the PEA at a PFS level. So
Yep.
I think the biggest part of that is looking for the red flags and the risk items so that you can mitigate them and design them out in the early stages rather than have surprises once you've built the operation. So I think it's all about de-risking as you move forward.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gabe.
Thanks. When you compare your grade profile and you look at other exploration plays around the world, how would you say it stacks up?
Yeah, I mean, fair question, Gabe. I mean, these magma conduit systems are so unique. So it really depends. I mean, and of course, the one as I was quite candid on, the one, what characterizes Norilsk as a mining platform is, of course, the massive sulfides. That's not to say they don't have disseminated and net textured sulfides. They do, but they focus on the massive sulfides because these are the high value deposits. We have the disseminated and the net textured deposits and evidence of massive in the system. So, but they have an 88-year head start on us. They commenced mining in the 1920s. So it's been 100 years of continuous production at Norilsk, and particularly in the Talnak field. But who do we compare to? Well, quite frankly, these systems are, they're few and far between. But I would say, strictly speaking, again, with the massive, the grade profile compares extremely well with Norilsk. With the disseminated and net textured, we're still, quite frankly, probably the highest grade exploration project in North America from PG nickel copper.
Thank you. And in terms of the recent drillings of the 20,000 meters, how many of those were sort of step out, would you call, holes? And what is kind of the biggest outcome so far of that program? What is it suggesting for the next program?
Yeah, well, it ties into the compilation slide that I showed you as part of the presentation today. We have evidence of mineralization and a probable resource block. Well, the word, let me back up. Probable is the wrong choice of words. We have an inferred resource block 3 kilometers to the north along trend in the conduit. We have another inferred resource block midway along the conduit. We are working on the far southeast end of the conduit in an area that had a higher grade discovery of mineralization by Rio Tinto. We have now expanded on Rio Tinto's footprint by at least 3 times. And so in effect, all our drilling's been kind of stepping out from there, but we now have a body that's close to 250 meters long just in the east end, an indicated resource area, indicated and inferred resource area in the east end, southeast end of the conduit that is, again, 250 meters long by 150 to 175 meters wide, averaging 30 meters thick, with a specific gravity of 3.0 to 3.1 on average. So do the math on that, that's over 3 million tons. Mm-hmm. By the way, we reported those dimensions previously, so I'm not telling you anything new here.
Okay, thank you. Just one last question. When you look at sort of the sort of sunk cost of the previous work, what would you say that capital number is? Turn to sum.
Can you repeat the question, Gabe?
In terms of sort of the sunk capital from the previous work, what would you estimate that to be in sort of today's dollars?
Oh, sorry, I was thinking ahead to initial capital for mine construction. No. What's been done historically is about 85 million Canadian between Panoramic and Rio. So I mean, and so that that is so substantial. Just to look at the end-on view of the current lake deposit, 647 boreholes. I mean, that was 65 million all by itself, right? So at the end of the day, it's an extremely important body of work, which, credit to Benton for putting this deal together, getting these assets out of the hands of the major mining companies that had them as they went on to other things. It creates an enormous opportunity for a junior explorer and developer like Clean Air Metals. And so from that perspective, look, we're not your average startup. Look, when we can start talking pre-development, sort of 7 months out of the gate, I think that's pretty substantial.
Great. Yeah, that's all for me. Thank you. Artie?
Thank you. What are the average widths on the massive sulfide intercepts? And when we look at the orientations and the intercepts, those numbers, how would you comment on the underground selective mining?
Yeah, so for the massive sulfide injections, which have been identified in drilling, and there's a half a dozen of them in the current lake deposit, they average from 1.5 meters to 2.6 meters wide, okay? They have limited lateral extent. We think of these as sulfide blobs that were entrained in the magma flow and injected into their current position. There's very good evidence for that, and so we don't just say that lightly. I mean, if we didn't believe it, then we wouldn't be starting a greenfields effort looking for massive sulfides. We think on balance that these injections, which have very sharp contacts and have sulfide sort of ratios, which would indicate that they had to form in the presence of a much larger proportion of ultramafic magma than one would find in the pipe, in the magma conduit, suggests that there is a larger pool or pools of massive sulfides in the system waiting yet to be found. We have good geophysical evidence that these features may exist on the Thunder Bay North property. And so, but again, it's early days. We have to get there, and so we shall. But so, yeah, again, from a mining perspective, Erdy, which I think was part 2 of your question, look, they're not going to these narrow sort of intervals of massive sulfide will not dramatically affect, sort of the bulk resource of the current lake deposit. I mean, they're nice sweeteners on any particular stope, but they're not, they're not in itself. They're more of an exploration indicator for us than a material mining indicator.
Thanks so much.
Perhaps, Erdy, for further clarification, we have thicknesses, because this is a conduit, circular and somewhat squashed in general profile. It's not a typical vertical mining scenario. So the thickness of this from a mining perspective, we have many intersections in the 90-meter range On average, it looks like we'll be mining about 30 meters, and we have full strike or cross sections of about 200 meters. So as we follow this down, that's very amenable to an open stope blast hole mining method. So a bit of a mass mining method, probably with either cemented or paste fill or a combination of both. So this is not going to be a narrow vein, high cost gold mine. This is going to be a relatively low cost bulk mining operation.
Thank you for the clarification, Campbell.
Can you go over your shareholder base, please?
Yes, 139.7 million shares issued. Benton Resources, 17%. Benton is a friend of the company. They obviously are sitting on 24.6 million shares, and they have assured us that they are holders and not sellers. And they've also assured us that if they would need to liquidate some or all of their position, they would do it in an orderly manner as a block trade, institutional type trade. So that's fine. But then in addition, we have about 50% institutional holdings. And
can you itemize them?
I think that's confidential information.
Oh,
I mean,
all the ones that report, rather. Yeah.
Yeah, look, Franklin Templeton's in there, Dynamic Precious Metal Funds. That's the 1832 fund. I believe Drill Driven Alpha out of Carlsbad, California is a shareholder, and so forth. So some name brand funds in here that hold about 50% of the stock.
I think U.S. Global Commodity Capital.
Yeah, I believe,
yeah.
well, you mentioned it, Ralph, I believe is in there as well, Ralph Aldis, yeah.
Excellent. And then could you go over update on cash reserves left for exploration and for near-term option agreement payments? When will you need to go to the market for new funds? The eternal question.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, at our present rate of progress and moving into feasibility in Q3, Q4 of next year, 40,000 meters of drilling. Look, we're funded for 10,000 meters of drilling in Q1. It's the latter part of phase one, call it now, as I explained earlier. And and we have a brilliant plan before us. So our objective here is, look, let's get the resource statement out and let's see where we sit. Okay, from our perspective, look, we have very solid coverage from Paradigm Capital, which at current sort of, the present valuation on the project is 79 cents a share NAV and a 60-cent price target. From our perspective, we think the resource update will unlock some of that value. And as we move to PEA, that will continue. If we have continued success at the end of the drill bit, and we have multiple targets to test in 2021, that that could be very material. But to answer your question, yeah, at some point we will need to come back to the well, and there are various ways and means by which one can do that. I mean, certainly, we have a substantial warrant position that's in the money. We're being approached by all the flow-through funds, right now, and we've said, well, yeah, let's get the resource statement out, and then we'll look at it again as the funds top up. We have very substantial interest at the project level from a variety of parties. So look, little early to say how we're going to pull this together, but suffice it to say, you're quite right. I mean, we'll need to obviously finance at the equity level or at the project level, in the future. But at this point, the mix is uncertain.
Are you partnering with any research groups or anyone advising on the R&D?
Well, besides Paradigm, I mean, Paradigm's the only one sort of that currently covers the company. Does that?
No, technical advisement. So on the ground and underground.
Well, that would be, of course, Nordman Engineering. Is that what you're getting at, Campbell? I don't know if I understand the question.
I know a lot of companies have universities that will lend their labs and things to
Yeah,
that
thank you.
kind of thing.
Well, look, we do have a research partnership with Lakehead University, the Geoscience Department, local university in the Bay, to the tune of $150,000 over 3 years, which was tripled or doubled by the National Science and Engineering Research Council of the Federal Government of Canada. So a total of $450,000 going into basic research. We are also members of the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada. We subscribe to their E3 ESG sort of approach to exploration and development. But in addition, they have a very wonderful Mining Matters curriculum sort of program that we are looking at, we're recommending to our First Nation partners to implement at the primary and secondary levels for their students to build sort of mining awareness. And as I said at a recent meeting with our First Nation partners, I said, you know, it's your school age and your high school age children today that are our tradespeople, geologists and engineers of tomorrow. And you know, the more they understand about mining and build that aptitude, the better. And they all agreed. They thought that was great.
Okay, thank you. We're way past our hour. So with that, thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll be asking you for feedback. Please share feedback. Please, you know, follow Clean Air Metals and Amvest Capital on usual social media places. And quick closing remark from Jim and Abraham, and we'll call it a day.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim. Oh, Jim, I'm going to jump in there. We lost your audio. Yeah,
Sorry.
There we go.
I'm just saying a unique opportunity. You know, we're not a typical junior explorer, as Abraham's already mentioned. We have a development-ready project, very well drilled off, very well defined, with a basket of prices significantly higher than when the original work that was done. And then 2 significant greenfields opportunities, one of them very drill indicated. So I think it's really quite unique and something the market hasn't quite figured out yet.
That's right. Yeah, thank you, Jim. And you know, and as we've also heard from the opening remarks, the South Africans are here. Sibanye-Stillwater and Implats, they're here. They love Canadian assets or North American assets, and you know, they're invested. So we think we're in world-class country, and we're very much looking forward to the results at the end of the drill in 2021. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.